Hi everyone, please take note of the following disclaimer. Please note that this video is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. It does not constitute financial advice. We are not registered financial advisors. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, your number one source for income-oriented investing where we don't ignore total returns. And in today's video, I'm going to address a question I get every once in a while. I keep seeing it over and over a few times. If I was a Canadian resident, if I still was a Canadian resident, would my portfolio be any different? What kind of portfolio management strategies would I be doing if I was still a Canadian resident? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So the first thing we'll talk about is the cash account and the TFSAs first, which is currently this portfolio. So this current portfolio is all Canadian listed ETFs. You guys know that I already sold off or liquidated my RRSP accounts and the Lira. But if I was in Canada, would I still have them? We'll focus on that later. First, I want to talk about just the two TFSAs and the cash account. So, of course, if I was still a Canadian resident, I would have my TFSA room. So, of course, I would keep maximizing the TFSA room every single year. That's by far the thing I pretty much miss the most leaving Canada. No more a TFSA room, right? 7,000, excuse me. $7,000 or whatever the new amount is we don't get as non-resident. It's still tax-free. All the dividends, if we extract them, are tax-free. But even if we extract them as non-resident, we can't put them back in unless we go back to Canada. So, but that's a given. I'm sure you already understand that. In terms of the portfolio, for the TFSAs and the cash account, for sure, I would stick still, if I was Canadian resident, to Canadian listed funds. I would not hold any US listed high yield funds in the TFSA or cash account, resident or non-resident, not to deal with the withholding taxes. No withholding taxes if you just hold Canadian. I don't understand, especially for the TFSA, because you don't get any of that back. You're just losing 15%. In the cash account, you could get a little portion of it back, maybe with a foreign income tax credit, but I would not bother. Okay, I would not bother holding any US listed funds in the TFSAs and the cash account like I do now if I was still a Canadian resident. I don't think my portfolio would look much different either, right? My fundamental core positions are still in the US, the best economy in the world, the best companies in the world, technology focused. I come from a tech background. I'm very, very comfortable with a tech heavy portfolio. So I think some of these would probably be the same core position. I don't think there would be much of a difference, guys, to be completely honest with you. Now, if you're asking me, okay, well, what would you hold in the TFSA versus the cash account, right, for tax efficiency? Well, that 100% depends on your province and tax bracket. So if we look at my crappy ex-province, Quebec, which is one of the worst taxed, Ontario and BC are the best taxed, by the way. I think there's only one or two provinces worse than Quebec. I think it's the Atlantic provinces, which anyway. So the key really to understand, look, I would still have the same strategy, same cover call ETFs. If, probably reinvest most of it right now, especially if I still running the channel and, income sources or whatever, multiple income sources, not living off of it. So in terms of what I would put in the TFSA versus the cash account, not many people know this, but it really depends which one's more efficient, capital gains and or ROC. I'll put ROC in the same category as capital gains. ROC is just delayed capital gains. But you'll notice very quickly, and you got to check your province. Just go to taxtips.ca, guys, and you'll be able to see this for your province. I don't know which bracket I would be in. I'm assuming maybe one of these. I don't know how much I would declare, if I would declare everything, if some revenue was declarable or not. I have no idea, but I'm just spitballing here that I would estimate I would be maybe in this bracket, maybe in this bracket. And as you could see in Quebec, in the middle tax brackets, there's almost no difference, capital gains and Canadian eligible dividends, right? In fact, if you're declaring more than $108,000, capital gains income is actually better than eligible dividend income. Not many people know that Canadians typically assume Canadian dividends, eligible Canadian dividends, so dividends that come from Canadian stocks like the banks, insurance companies, oil and gas, etc., are better than capital gains income, right? They're the best source of income. That's not true. That's only true in the really low tax brackets. But as soon as you go higher, you see that capital gains ends up being the better tax source. So in terms of if I would have a little bit of Canadian exposure, which I would, I'm going to be adding HDIV soon and maybe some other Canadian stuff like HDIV and Class A are really pretty much my only Canadian exposures right now. So depending on this, I would probably leave those in the Canadian stuff in the TFSA, especially as a higher tax bracket, because the capital gains are better than eligible dividends. And capital gains is pretty much almost all capital gains and or ROC are pretty much all you're going to get from these ones, right? Big E, HHIS, QD, QQCL, HYLD. HYLD maybe have a little bit of foreign income, but QQCL, QD, HHIS, Big E, I expect almost either none or very, 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 very little foreign income. I expect 99% plus of the income classified as capital gains or ROC. Same thing for MST is going to be 100% capital gains or ROC. HPIX 100% capital gains or ROC, right? The Ethereum, right? These things have no dividend. So, it's all covered call income, which means it's going to be all capital gains or ROC. But anyway, in terms of my placement for my cash account, our joint cash account, and our two TFSAs, I probably wouldn't break my head too much because of this information, but it really depends on the tax bracket. The higher you go, if you're Canadian resident, the higher you go, the more you want to keep the Canadian stuff like HDIV. And of course, it's not all Canadian eligible dividends, or bank is another good example, right? If you have a Canadian focus cover call ETF like bank or ENCL or HDIV, you could expect maybe 15 to 20% of the income considered Canadian eligible dividends. It's not even that big. It's a small portion. Most of it's still going to be capital gains or ROC, but things like the American stuff where the stocks almost have no dividends at all, or it's very, very low, it's pretty much all capital gains and ROC. So hopefully that makes sense, right? Got to look at your province and tax bracket, but most likely I would hold the Canadian stuff maybe in the TFSA, I'm assuming, at a higher tax bracket, or it really almost makes no difference in some of these, right? You see that it's almost the same anyway. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Global X Canada, who, in case you didn't know, have launched a copper producer equity covered call ETF. The stock symbol is CPCC. So this ETF invests in copper producers, and copper prices have been hitting all-time highs recently. So this ETF holds some major copper producers and also does a covered call strategy to help or generate monthly cash flow. In fact, they just declared a first monthly distribution of 14 cents a share. And if ever you don't want the covered call overlay, they also have COPP, which is just the copper producers without any covered calls. And if you're wondering what's going on with copper out there and why it's so important, Global X actually came out with a really neat video that talks about this in detail, all the utility of copper. So I'll pin a comment with the link to this video. You could check it out. And in case you didn't know, they have your other precious resources covered as well. If you're a covered call investor like I am, they have the Global X Silver Covered Call ETF, AGCC. Of course, you have the gold one, HGY. Gold Producers, GLCC, that's the Gold Producers Covered Call ETF. And they also have an enhanced or 25% leverage version now of their GLCC ETF, which is GLCL. So make sure to go on the website for more information. And again, thank you to Global X Canada for sponsoring this video. Now, the really big difference is that if my wife and I would still be resident, we would definitely have kept our RRSPs. We wouldn't have cashed out our RRSPs, right? I cashed out the RRSPs because as a non-resident, you just pay a 25% flat tax, and you could cash it out. So obviously, if we're still a resident, you cash it out, you pay like regular income, which is an absolute disaster. So I would continue to consider the RRSPs as kind of just like growth vehicles for I don't know how long, probably till 71, right? It would be like my super safety net. And because my main portfolio, which would be our two TFSAs and cash account, I would probably make the RRSPs I would put my US listed funds there. I would put my favorite US listed high yield covered call ETFs. And there's quite a few of them, and there's a lot of exciting launches. I would focus on that in the RSPs. I think I would keep them very, very, very simple. I still think I would have a NASDAQ 100 as either the only position or a central position in both. my RSP, my wife's RSP. So when we cashed them out, we basically just had QDT on drip. What is QDTE? It's just a NASDAQ 100 zero DTE covered call ETF, which is still performing really, really well. I actually recently did a video on QDT. Make sure to check out the video. It's doing its job. So I want to tell you, if I was still Canadian, if I still had an RSP, which US listed funds I would maybe think about or consider. So I would still consider a NASDAQ 100 ETF as a core position. And what are the three best ones, in my opinion, right now in terms of total return? Remember, RSP, it's just going to be on drip. The most important factor is the total return. So total return wise, the best ones versus just QQQ in general is QDTE, TDAC, and QQQI. Right? They all have, this one has 14% yield, this one has 17%, this one has the highest one. But either way, my focus would be on the total returns. Now, what's really exciting if you're a Canadian resident, or if I was a Canadian resident, I would be excited if I still have my RSP, if I still focus on the US listed ones. I would be looking extremely forward to the leverage versions of TDAC and QQQI, which are coming out soon. So I know that a 30% leverage version of TDAC is going to be coming out, and an up to 50% leverage version of QQQI is going to be coming out from NEOS. They're doing the same things, I believe, for their S&Ps. NEOS is actually adding that leverage to the Bitcoin ETF as well, BTCI. So I would be paying close attention to when those come out. I don't know if I would maybe switch my QDT right away to the leverage versions. I would maybe wait to see and do some total return comparisons. But most likely, I think I would probably switch for sure to the leverage version. If TDAC is doing really, really, really well, QQQI, QDT, if they're doing really well versus just the NASDAQ 100, which they are, right? Very, very, very similar. If we do, that was QDT. If we do TDAC, I think TDAC's actually outperforming QQQM. It's outperforming. This is for a cover call fund that has no leverage. Tap Alpha is literally the only one, guys, that have figured it out. It's a zero DT strategy. They use AI to do it. So I would be paying very close attention to TDAC or the leverage version when it comes out. Very, very, very closely. And luckily for me, I'm partners with them. They're sponsoring my US series, and I kind of reached out to them. And, I have the privilege of choosing my own sponsors. I'm only going to choose the best, right? Right? What I feel is the best. So it's really a privilege of mine. I like it because I'll always get the inside scoop, but I'm going to give you the inside scoop. I'm going to have them on my channel soon for them to do a deep analysis on how that 30% leverage version is going to work, because it's reset daily. So it's a little bit different than in the US one. Than the 25% or 33% long-term cash leverage on the Canadian side. This is a 30% daily reset. So because I don't know exactly how it's going to work or how it's going to perform, I would probably not switch my QDTE or my TDAC. Maybe in my wife's account, I'll leave QDT. In my account, I would have switched to TDAC. I don't know. But I would definitely be on the lookout for the top performing NASDAQ 100 cover call ETF. So I would pay very, very close attention to the leverage version of TDAC and the leverage version of QQQI, which I think they're going to be 50% leverage. I would look at total returns, and maybe if I'm really having a hard time choosing, I could do half, or I could do one different one in my account, different one in my wife's account. Just put it on drip and just forget about it. And over time, keep monitoring the total returns and maybe switch to the one that I feel is going to have higher total returns. What about other ETFs on the US side that I would maybe think about considering? WPay is maybe something that I would track and I would look at. It's fairly interesting because it uses, it's just a collection of the weekly pay roundhill ETFs, which do no covered calls, but have 20% leverage and weekly distributions. So essentially, they're just kind of like, it's an automated drawdown system. And weekly pay, I think it's like the closest thing to HHIS on the American stock market, except some of the stocks I'm not really interested in. So if they're just gonna, I think of this one like maybe a better version of YMAX, because YMAX has no leverage. I think the fee's higher. So this one has no covered calls, but it has the weekly income, but there's 20% leverage. But I don't know. There's United Health, there's Baba. There's some stocks I'm not really interested in, but a lot of stocks you could see are, Burke. I'm not really interested in that one. A lot of stocks are kind of the same ones in HHIS, really. In terms of performance, not that great though. If we just do WPay versus something like that's been around for a while, like QDTE, you see that it's underperforming. So I would monitor it. But if a stock picking strategy is not beating a NASDAQ 100 in terms of total return, I don't see a point, right? Total returns would be my chief concern in the RRSPs. So I would maybe keep an eye on it. But I think our main core position would be probably the leveraged version of TDAC or QQQI, or maybe QDT is going to come out roundhill. Maybe they're going to see, oh, well, they're coming out with a leveraged version. I'm losing AUM, which they're about to hit $1 billion. I think it's one of their most popular funds. Maybe QDT, maybe Roundhill is going to come out with a 20-25% leveraged version of QDTE. So it's very exciting, and that's what I would look at. In terms of Bitcoin position, it's possible, I have a lot of Bitcoin exposure in the main portfolio, but in the retirement account, if I would be considering some Bitcoin exposure, I would definitely be putting a close eye on the leveraged version of BTCI when it comes out, right? Or another possibility is just to stick with the Canadian ones, like an HBTE or an HBIX, but I feel like maybe to counterbalance the cover call strategy on the Canadian side, I would probably be interested in the leveraged version of BTCI the most. Maybe some MSTR. For MSTR, the only one that I like in terms of strategy is the REX one, MSII, because they're only doing cover calls on 50% of the portfolio, and there's leverage. And there's between 105 and 150, they're targeting 125. So this kind of cover call strategy is very close, like what they do typically on the Canadian side. It actually pretty much reminds me a lot of the ultra yield on the Biggie and the Canny, where they have, pretty much at the money on 50% of the portfolio. So maybe it's similar that way. So maybe I would add a little bit of MSII for MSTR exposure a little bit. But I think the main exposures would be the NASDAQ 100 index, which I feel is the top index long term. And I would keep it simple. I would only have one in each account, put it on drip, and it would be no work. That would be my what I probably would do. So that's it, everyone. That's what I think I would do if I would still be a Canadian resident. Hopefully the video was informative for you, and let me know if you have any questions. Stay safe, stay passive, stay healthy, and stay honorable. See you next time.